Hey, welcome back to Apollo City Comics. I'm Brandon Blocksdorf, and today we have one of the coolest episodes I've been looking forward to since I started this podcast. I am so really excited to talk about this character and have our guest on with us. But first, some quick updates. If you check out Instagram and all of our social media, you're gonna have an update about the posters being designed for the punk rock anthology, a lead-in into San Diego Comic-Con this year, and what we're hopefully planning to pull off there. And along with that, we actually just announced just recently a really cool black and white preview book called Trash Can, which is a kind of play on the word ash can for a preview comic and whatnot. But Lesser Known Comics teamed up with Rat Brain Zine, which is run by Max Flowers and Milo from El Gato Prince, who actually made all of our patches and all of our posters. They have their own zine set up and going, and they've been making comics and cool shit for a while. So they're doing this cool black and white preview book of all these upcoming creators. And on the zero issue, you could check out the beginning of Teenage Babylon as it's evolved from what you read in the anthology. And so me, Christian Lee, and Max Flowers all have been working together to bring this book to life. So you'll get that preview of this, a black and white preview of everything, and whatever 3 or 4 pages that are inside of this. So I'm really excited for you all to check out Teenage Babylon finally, and we'll have a lot more comics coming your way. The Cyberpunk anthology that Alex is running is almost wrapped up for submission. So if you haven't sent your stuff already, reach out to Alex or send it in as much as you can to get inside of that book. That's going to be a killer Cyberpunk anthology. And I mean, other than that, I just want to dive right into this because this is super exciting. And we have the amazing and astonishing Sara with us to talk about no one else but John Constantine, the Hellblazer. Hi, Sara.
Hey, Brandon.
I am hyped to have you on the show because we have been talking about comics for like over 5 years, 8 years that we've kind of known each other.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. It's definitely about 8 years.
Yeah. And what brought us together was just like, I think I was reading comics at work, or maybe, I've always just kind of talked about comics with everybody, no matter if they're interested or not. And I think we started naming authors or writers, or I discovered you might kind of like comics. And I was like, do you like Grant Morrison or Alan Moore or stuff like that?
Oh, yeah, it definitely felt like a test. Like,
That's
do you
amazing.
know the X-Men?
Yeah, especially in like the beginning days, because that would have been around 2015 when I was like
Yeah.
switching out of being a musician, and everyone hears me talk about this transition and just like really diving into comics and discovering comics and just overloading myself with stuff. And at that point, I thought it was like the pinnacle of everything. But I think, are you the one that actually got me to start reading Sandman?
I think you had already started it again, or for the first time.
Okay.
But you'd read one volume, and for whatever reason, put a pause on it, or something else caught your attention.
Hmm.
And I was like, no, no, Brandon, you have to.
Yeah,
You
you're
have
you're
to
like
finish this so we can have conversations.
Yeah, you're like why I became obsessed with Neil Gaiman and Sandman.
Oh,
And like I know before you left El Paso or right after, you got to see Neil Gaiman do one of his evenings with Neil Gaiman, right? In Austin, I want to say.
I actually saw him recently in Boston, but I had seen him
Mhm.
previously do when he was still doing book signings. I'd
Oh,
seen him in
okay.
Denver a couple of times.
Oh, okay. That's what it was. That's what it was then.
Yeah,
Yeah. And we both saw him on the same tour recently as
yeah.
well. It's kind of has Neil Gaiman ever written a Hellblazer comic?
He's written an issue, I think.
Oh, an issue. Yes, he's
Yeah,
written one issue. I think it's
like
issue
it's in the
14.
20s or 30s, I think. So we're close to getting there.
Yeah. No, I think it's earlier. I think it's in the 14, 15 range,
Oh,
I
so
wanna
even
say.
sooner. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
so maybe the next episode. Which brings us to the point of this entire episode. We love, the Vertigo line and Swamp Thing and all that, Sandman. That's what drew us into being friends and loving comics and just, like, diving into these more kinda gritty, serious, like, fantastical worlds a bit more. And Constantine the Hellblazer has always been one of my favorite characters ever. He's a badass. He's kind of fucked up. He's a totally great flawed character. He's into all this cool dark magic and all this wild stuff. And he's now kind of actually in the last 4 or 5 years a bit more popular in mainstream media. He had a TV show which neither one of us finished, but we both gave it. a valiant attempt to finish, and that was because of network stuff and all that. It was on the wrong network to start with. An HBO Max like Constantine is what we need. You know what I mean? Like a really cool.
Well, like there was a rumor it was going to happen. And then like Keanu Reeves said he wanted to do Constantine 2. And so they were like, well, I guess we won't make a new show. And who knows if that'll ever happen.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, with James Gunn, leading the charge, I feel like he would go into more of those fantastical, wild realms, especially starting off with Swamp Thing. So we could hope that one day we'll get a
Yeah.
John Constantine. What were your thoughts on the Keanu Reeves one, though?
Oh my gosh. So what was that? 2005, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember going to
something
see it
rage.
with my brother, who is the reason I'm into comics personally. And I loved it. Not so much. I mean, Keanu Reeves is, Keanu Reeves. Like,
Hmm.
there's a reason he's always cast in these roles, right? He's very much an everyman in some ways. But I think it was kind of like shortchanging the character of John Constantine, because he has like a big personality, you know.
Yeah,
And so to
yeah,
cast someone who like doesn't emote a lot, or like his sarcasm doesn't read any different than any other thing he says, was I think really like not the best choice. And he's very American and like
biggest flaw. He's
yeah.
very American, like
Yeah.
too
And like,
American.
the story arc that they chose to do is very specific.
Hmm.
Yeah. But I love Tilda Swinton so much.
Oh, so
Um,
great.
that Tilda Swinton as Gabriel was like everything for me with that movie.
I could see that 100%.
Yeah. Like I only want to watch those scenes.
Yes, yeah.
And then like, Shia LaBeouf as Chaz was so weird.
Because
Like,
Jazz is like a bigger guy, and he's like kind of meant to almost protect John if he ever really kind of needs him or do some dirty work a little bit, besides
yeah,
just
and like he
taxi him around.
owes he owes John Constantine saving him or something. I can't remember
Yeah.
I think that comes later, like that
Hmm.
explanation. But
I
like, so it
forgot
was
why as
kind of
well.
weird to have this child driving him around. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That was kind of a thrown off thing for sure. I think the like tone of it was probably
Mm.
on point for the time, 2005 introducing that. What I remember most is just the horrific video game that came out of it. And I
Ooh.
I tried, do you remember Sam?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Me and
Sam, your
Sam
best
tried.
friend?
Yeah, yeah. We
Yeah, I
tried
remember
playing it
Sam.
like like 6 months ago when I went to go visit in El Paso,
Mm.
and I was like, "Dude, let's throw on the Constantine game." And we tried it for like 15 minutes, and I was like, this is terrible."
What system was it on?
Like first Xbox, like
Oh,
original,
wow.
and it was a movie tie-in game, and
Wow.
it was bad. It was really, and it's one of those games you finish in like 4 hours too, apparently, because it's that bad. Like it just.
Yeah. I feel like the early 2000s, there was a lot of like movies trying to tap into like the occult and,
Hmm.
the darker side of things. Like, I feel like there's a bad Arnold Schwarzenegger movie or something. Like, it falls into this genre.
Oh my god, I would love to see that too. That kind of sounds like too entertaining to like die for. And Nicole Schwarzenegger taking down
Yeah.
stuff.
When I feel like all the soundtracks are just like new metal, right? And like,
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
was definitely
Evanescence and
what was
like,
happening at the time.
and I mean that's what I just got this killer like Mezco wherever he is up here, and there's like a little video review, but like the comics we like, there's no real action figures or figures for, and that's why I died over this Mezco. I think you have one of the only Sandman like
Oh, really?
figures ever. Yeah, I think there was like the like that doll, the one that you have, and then I
Yeah.
think there was like an actual action figure that was like really short term. But we never see like really merch for Constantine, and no one really knows what he's about. They've brought him into some of the Justice League animated stuff, which has been really interesting. The was it Dark Side War, I think, is the one we were just talking about.
Apocalypse.
Apocalypse War, yeah, Dark Side
Yeah.
War. But Apocalypse War, and then I know he had his own animated movie with the dude that played him on the NBC show as well, voicing him.
Yeah. And then there was also like a House of Mystery.
That one's cool as fuck. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've
that
seen that
was
one.
I think that was the closest to the comics because it's so dark.
Yes, exactly. That's when I watched it, I was kind of blown away what they were doing to John and like him going through the different like versions of his life
Yeah,
and being with his friends and everything. And that's a core thing about John Constantine. And we discover that kind of within this first volume is
yeah,
that that something really tragic happened to John. That's really kind of just messed him up nightmare wise. And then you also know that like his group of friends somehow there was a team and they disbanded and they all fucking hate John at this point. Like they're just sick of his shit. How would you describe John Constantine, his personality to someone if you had to?
oh,
While
his
making you, so you
personality.
have to.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because it's a character that I really love, but sometimes I struggle to articulate why, like
Yeah,
what it is
yeah.
happening, because he's not a typical hero if he's ever a hero, right?
hmm
I wouldn't even call him an anti-hero in many ways. Like he's just very self-interested a lot of times, but also so clever.
hmm
And definitely a character who people feel compelled to uh, tell their stories to. He could talk to anybody,
hmm
and then that's how he gets into so much trouble because he just meets people on the street and absorbs all their problems, which just so happen to be related to his whole general
Demon
story arc.
quest,
Yeah,
practically.
demon quest. Yeah, and he just attracts a certain energy, I think, too. But yeah, I would say he's definitely typical British humor, very self-deprecating. What I love about the comic is there's all these narration boxes, so you
hmm
get to hear his thoughts. And the prose is it can be a little lofty, but it's very engaging too. Very descriptive. I don't think my thoughts sound that descriptive
Yes, that
personally.
poetic coming out like from the
Yeah,
start.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, what about you?
I
What's
think,
something?
yeah, he's just very self-interested and like what you said, he's clever and he could get himself out of any situation. That's for
Mhm.
sure. And he's not really interested in like he wants to save people. His intention is to
Yeah,
save people. But when push comes to shove, it's like more of a him over everybody else because he knows he needs to survive. And this might be heartbreaking for him, but you know what? Like what needs to be done needs to be done. And that's the thing. If he's fighting these creatures, these demons. He's going against this paranormal, this occult stuff. It's almost like whatever stops this thing is what's going to win. And whether, people like I lose people or not, like as long as I get out of it, that's going to be the result, like I would love to try to save everyone, but if their death means I get out,
yeah,
I got to get out, like, and it almost makes sense every time. It's that inner ego, that inner part of us where we're just like, oh, I mean, we could help everybody. And he does try to help. He
he
really
does. He
does
does.
try. He's just what he's dealing with and the type of characters and villains he's dealing with, it's that or death. And somehow he just hasn't died yet. And he even winds up with like demon's blood, as we find out later on. Which
Yeah,
might explain stuff later on because, when we look at Constantine, even with the figure I got, he has a lot of magical powers. And we haven't really seen him use like conjuring magic where you could visibly see it. Like, his hands are lighting up and like doing circle stuff or anything like that. It's very almost like grounded, like I'm gonna use like a spell to find somebody, a location spell, or I'm gonna do like a small little thing here and there and tamper into stuff, but it's never like over the top like fantastical magic. I guess it's very kind of bottom of the barrel where almost like we feel like we can do it if we try hard enough.
yeah. It definitely seems like approachable magic, I guess. Right?
hmm
He has to go get supplies. He has to draw the thing. It's not. I think having just recently watched the Justice League Dark thing, where it's just it just turns on. It's very cool, but kind of also sanitized, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. In the comics, it's very much not that. At least not to start with.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, as our goal in this
Oh
whole
yeah.
thing is to read all 300 issues of Hellblazer,
Yes.
which we're trying to dedicate 100 issues a year because life
How
is
many
hard.
issues are we in?
Yeah, I think we made it up to issue almost 14. I wanna say, because it cuts off because we also this goes through, I think, 1 through 12 or something like that, and then it breaks off into a series called the Horrorist, which is, like, a special, like, tie-in to everything, which, David Lloyd does the artwork for that. I believe the art on most of the series so far is basically the same, artist for the majority of the issues, but Jamie Delano
Yeah.
is the writer that we get the entire time. Um that I just absolutely love. Let me see what issue we actually went up to. Oh, we went up to issue 13 and then we read the annual and then the Horrorist 1 and 2. So we're barely about to start issue 14 out of 100. I don't know if the
It's
Horrorist
gonna
counts
take
as
a
like
while.
yeah, it's going to be an uphill
Commitment.
battle. But we were talking about some of the creative teams on this and there's been so many cool ones. Jamie Delano is like the legendary writer for it, which is interesting because Alan Moore created Constantine. This is a character that came out of Swamp Thing and based off of the musician Sting, and turned out to be one of the most compelling characters in that. That there is a Swamp Thing tie-in in this first volume.
Yeah.
Did you read that one?
The tie-in?
Yeah.
Yes. The one
Okay,
that
you might have to
yeah.
give us detail if we get closer to that.
Oh, right. Did you not
Um,
have it?
I didn't have it because I'm
Oh,
reading
okay.
them like on scans,
But
so
do you
I didn't
wanna
have.
tell us about, Constantine's role in Swamp Thing? I haven't
I
read that in a long time.
I don't even remember
What?
Constantine's role. I know that like part of
It's
his
like volume
role
3 or something, I think.
is does he have to have sex with Abby that early? Is that a
No,
different
he, like
part?
no, like, when he's introduced in Swamp
Oh,
Thing.
I don't even remember his introduction in that first fight. It's been so
Oh,
long since I've read that.
okay. Yeah, it's been I don't have a copy here, so
Oh, okay. I would have to dig up a copy of that at
but
this
he's
point. I'm gonna
like a supernatural advisor or just hangs
oh
out
my
like, they have
god.
a relationship, like, for
Might
a
have
while,
to we'll do a little Patreon bonus episode on the
and I'm
first
sure,
two
like, a
through
girlfriend
Constantine.
dies or something because it's John Constantine, and all his girlfriends and boyfriends and people die.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things about him too, is that I think he's one of the first, like, bisexual characters to,
Oh,
like,
definitely, yeah, I
exist
think so,
in,
yeah.
like, the DC universe from the start,
Yeah,
aside from, like, Sandman and stuff like that, but Vertigo was really cool of just being like, "No, Constantine swings every direction, demon, human, boy, girl, it doesn't matter, like, that's Constantine's game, and that's just how he works." He's so fluid. I guess that's one of the best ways to describe him. He's just
yeah,
super
I think
fluid,
so, yeah.
like, he's just a cult magician that just is in London, and I feel like that's a perfect description. If I think of any occultist that's just, like, fluid, like, sexually, I'm like, they're kinda like
Mhm.
John Constantine. If they're not doing magic, they're fucking up, you know?
Are they wearing a trench coat, like,
John
smoking a
Co
cigarette,
He's why I've always
tying
wanted a
flutes?
trench coat. Working at Banana Republic, I was always looking for the Constantine trench coat, never had one.
Oh, wow. And yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think they ever had one for men, yeah.
Yeah, super lame, super, super lame. I bet I fit into women's at some
I
point.
think
Um,
so.
it'll be thin enough.
I don't think John's was a women's coat.
Yeah, that would probably make sense as well,
Yeah,
to
I
be
think so.
honest.
One of his
Um,
dead girlfriends left it or something.
had to be. He doesn't have like, and it's crazy because he does have like a flat. He does have his own base and everything, but he's just traveling a whole lot. And in volume 3, he travels even more. But swinging it back to volume 1,
Yeah.
this is a very almost like classic horror type of book. This isn't your like slash and gore and what's hiding underneath type of horror. This is kind of just like I don't even know how to describe it. What's your point on this type of horror? Like what's your stance on it?
I mean, I hadn't read it in a long time, and it was a little bit like, "Oh, right, I forgot. We're gonna see a lot of, like, gore, um,
Mhm.
and a lot of, like, really kind of horrific imagery."
Yeah.
Um, but it isn't, you're right, it's not like someone's been stabbed usually, it's like, you know,
The
someone's
first issue.
entire layer of skin is missing, like
Yeah, or like this first issue is a great example. I mean, you start
oh,
off
yeah,
with
when it
this guy
starts,
just
yeah.
like eating and he can't stop eating. This hunger just won't go away and he's in a restaurant and he's reaching for people and as he's eating more, you start seeing him like start to become more wrinkled and shriveled up until the point where he dies of starvation.
Yeah, I guess I would say it's very heavy on the body horror, right?
There we go. Yeah, because I mean, bleeding into that, right after that, the next horrific part is when John's checking up on his friend, and then his
Yeah.
friend is in the
Oh,
bathtub, just covered in bugs, a full page splash, and that's like one of those eerie, creepy. Like there's just all this infestation of roaches and insects all over him, and you're like, what the fuck is going on here? Um, all the way over to like doing an exorcism type of horror. You know what I mean? It's such a
yeah.
weird. It bounces around so much where it's not like scary and it's not too grounded where you kind of feel too scared of it, but you're very interested in that occult style. It's very occult horror, just 100%. There's no other, it kind of like Midsommar, you know what I mean? Like it's
Mm.
creepy, it's kind of real eerie, but then like I would imagine seeing a guy hanging and there's like bugs growing out of him the way it was in Midsommar in a Hellblazer book. I could see that as an influence.
Oh, definitely, and happening in broad daylight, right?
Yeah, and happening in broad daylight, that's another
Yeah.
thing. It's nothing's waiting for the night in these type of horror scenes.
No, no, it's, like, nonstop, and, like, I think the coloring has a lot to do with that, like, it's so bright, and so vivid, especially, like, later on, his dream sequences, right?
Mhm.
They're just, like, so beautiful and surreal.
Oh, yeah. I could tell is your copy a recolored version? I'm wondering if your edition it
Um, I don't
because
know.
they did the recoloring for Swamp Thing, and I know they've done recolorings for, like, Miracle Man that we've been covering, and I've never seen Hellblazer recolored, if it has been yet.
I'm trying to think of when these came out. I think these came out in, like, 2012, so maybe.
Mine's like I
It's
wonder if
still
I could
got,
show it
like,
here.
paper, though.
It still has very much this, like, gritty kind of, like, coloring to it.
Oh, yeah, for sure, like,
Okay,
because
so
it's
it's
not on
about
the
the
screen.
same.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, very almost flat. Like even for a whole character, you have like that character all in just one solid orange of some sort. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This like 80s coloring style or early 90s coloring style is really it was like a staple. I guess it must have been with the printing and everything too, because Swamp Thing and Miracle Man look just like this too, the original ones. And that's why they
Mhm.
remastered it all and recolored it. And I wonder if that would benefit Hellblazer to feel a bit more creepy and eerie with clearer coloring. But
Mm.
on the other hand, what you're saying is like the way this grittiness feels and looks, and how this dark palette just doesn't even like print right. It does give it a more kind of horror vibe, especially for that era.
Yeah, I mean, I really love it. I don't expect a lot of pink in my comics.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, purple, sure, but, like, yeah. And then a lot of flashbacks are gonna be all one tone.
Hmm.
If scenes are taking place somewhere else at the same time, sometimes they're the same tone that's different than
Yeah,
what's happening to John. Hell
yeah.
is obviously very red and orange.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, and even like I'm looking at this insect scene in the first one where he's in the church and there's like a giant bug just chasing him down. It's all green, and the entire palette for the bottom part of the pages where it's attacking the priest and John just starts running away. Um, and it's kind of funny as we bring up as John's like characteristics. He's like when the thing sticks the tongue down its throat, I start running again. Um,
Yeah.
it does me good to run through the dark, through the rain. If it weren't for Emma, it would have been it would have had me. I owe her again. Finally, my lungs give out, and it's just like about John just running away from the fucking problem, and just like, okay, this person's dying next to me. I'm not going to stop it. I'm not going to try to stop it. This is the end for them.
Yeah.
So sad. So
It's
fucked up.
pretty on brand.
Um, and that's kind of like think what's interesting about the first volume is that it's really unique and really interesting because issue one sets up your horror, sets up the tone for the whole series, and it's a 40-page first issue that was kind of done by Vertigo to just like have more incentive, more bang for your buck to get this big
Mm.
story inside of it. So I thought that was kind of cool about it. And you jump into the next issues, and they're all your standard comic book size, 24 pages or so.
Yeah, and I like that it just starts like you don't know much about this character.
Mhm.
Um, immediately, it's just like, oh, it's just some guy returning home from somewhere after he did something. and oh shit, he can't even relax. There's another
Yeah.
problem waiting for him, right? He
Yeah,
just can
exactly.
never catch a break. Like,
Yeah, that's another thing. The way you're saying like how he encounters every issue and how open he is talking to people. He literally every single issue he's encountering something right after he's like, finally, I got to fucking fall asleep for a minute, and then
yeah,
some other shit starts blowing up, and he's like, what the fuck, and just lights another cigarette, and it's just like, here you go. Because even relaxing for him is difficult, as we see in issue 2, where he's in this hotel room
mm,
and all of a sudden you're seeing the ghosts of all of his friends and he starts arguing with like all these like people that he's just let down and failed in his life, and you discover more about them as we go into volume 2. But seeing him like in this badass like leopard print bed too is kind of awesome. But it's the arguments between like his friend and Emma, Frank Benjamin, just like fighting with dead ghosts. I just love that concept. How he just will never catch a break and never like he's traumatized. He's just fully traumatized.
yeah. What did you think about the faces on the street, like the little inserts, uh, the articles written by Satchmo Hawkins that explain like kind of Constantine's backstory?
Oh, I kind of love those because
Yeah.
it's giving you like an outsider's interpretation of the whole of John, and so it's kind of giving you some influence on John and what he should be and what he's like.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it is told from like somebody who doesn't know him very well, but is like talking to people who have met him and run into him or seen his band play or whatever. And it paints like a very different portrait of this character.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
where you're like, shit, what happened? Like, um, everyone knows that this guy is bad news, but no one can say what happened or why or
Yeah, exactly. Like he's almost like an enigma, and like everyone wants to know this guy. Everyone wants to be cool and like figure this person out. But
yeah.
like, where in the world is John Constantine? Like where does he reside? Like he's so mysterious that he kind of just sounds like someone that doesn't even exist because you have to catch him. And if you catch him and you're around him, that's probably not a good thing either. You're probably in a bad situation if you see John Constantine around. Which I mean, dude, going by like what happens to his friend at the second issue. Oh, we're also introduced to a character that was in the movie too. Um, Papa Midnight.
Oh
This
yeah.
guy totally different from in the film. Because here he's more like African ritual type of like magic and occultness. And he does some wild shit from like killing a bird and dropping blood. And this insect creature that we're battling in the very first like kind of arc that we're going through here, he's literally using his friend as bait. And when he uses his friend as bait, what happens is that this insect creature just kind of goes inside of him. And that's how John traps this demon, this like insect demon, and it takes a hold of his friend. And his friend is a junkie. That's the whole thing about it too. Like John's friends aren't always the best type of people. Sometimes they've gone through shit. They have their own issues and flaws. But John keeps on saying, I'll give you a hit once you do this and do this. And he finally like does this stuff, and he's marked up like crazy. And this insect thing just rips his friend apart, and he eventually dies. And John, being who John is, just gets fucking wasted until he passes out and he's rediscovered. And I mean, that's what John has to do. He has to like drink the pain away from all these demons, from all these like, supernatural elements going on. And that's why he always has a cigarette, because Jesus Christ, like if you're facing this stuff, that's something unique and different on its own.
Yeah,
And then
definitely. And it's like it's not the last time we'll see something bad happen to one of John's friends.
yeah,
Or
I'm excited to get to the next friend that's coming up.
yeah.
Um what's cool too is that like this slowly, I really like how the world like unravels as you go issue by issue, because issue 3, again, we're started off with a new situation. The first two situations was like overeating and it was decomposing and that type of hunger aspect. This one, this guy is he's kind of running and he's being followed by these two people, and all of a sudden they're the ones that like capture him and just take off running until he can't run anymore, and he's so exhausted his body gives out. He just literally drops dead. And his shoes are all smoking as they're coming up and whatnot. And it's like, okay, now we're introduced to different it's horror that I've never seen on TV or horror that I've never seen on like movies, you know? Um, I think literature, the way it has to describe horror is totally different from how it has to represent itself in other mediums where you could use like jump scares and stuff like that to really bring out things. Here it's just like we're going to introduce you to something and it's going to be mysterious and it'll be a little bit demonic and it's almost like not even scary, but it gives you like the pinnacle of like reality tied into everything. And if this was happening, like demons controlling people, demons doing all this type of stuff, it's super fucking you have to be on a different level to kind of like understand it in a sense. Does that make sense? I feel.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, they definitely have to be very intentional about their panels, I think,
Hmm.
to sort of like, because I mean, the that scene when they're like running with him, the way it like goes across the two pages and then
Yeah.
underneath, and like, yeah, it's just, yeah, all the sweat pouring down his face. It's so intense because it can do like a kind of close up that I don't think you would really see in film like this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for reals. That totally makes sense. That and just like how they have to produce the horror of it. Like, you know, his facial expressions, like what you're saying, like how drained he is, how like where he just feels like he could melt practically from how intensely they're making him like push himself, all the way to like where you see these demons and this giant demon just sitting on his like palette. I think it's on page 17 on the second issue. I don't know if your book is formatted that same way. Probably not because I'm on the same
No,
book as you.
it's on page 81 for me, but that's
Oh,
okay.
okay, cool. All right, yeah. But like showing like the demons and how hell works. That's another like we don't really see that in a lot of mainstream DC comics or Marvel comics where you're seeing actual like demonic horror. I think John even has a sword in this one. Yeah, he does. That they kind of melt into a dollar sign. Um,
Yeah, it's funny
yeah,
because like we see the demons as yuppies, I guess, because it's the 80s.
yeah,
Because yeah, I think like these early issues in particular are like very political, right?
hmm,
Um, the writer Delano clearly has like a political perspective. Um, and like yeah, just like how gross and awful the demons are. Um, I think it's supposed to be an obvious analogy to like how gross like people can be.
yeah. Like politicians, people running that type of stuff, and just like business people. The way that's what's going
Yeah,
on in that story. Yeah, exactly. I could totally see that. Kind of like issue 4 that comes up, where it's not
yeah,
really like it's a horror story because it's about children going towards this man who's taking care of all of them and marrying all of them and making them as their own, and they're kind of like kidnapping these kids, these little girls, and killing them. And I guess they're the other girls are ghosts or something at that point because they've all been there for a bit.
yeah,
um and you're not too sure which is scarier, like the man that's kind of like either just abusing these girls and killing them, or this God's Warriors group that makes their first appearance in this issue, where it's all the kind of what we see nowadays too, with these over the top groups with their guns and swords and bats and all this stuff, thinking that they're protecting things when they're actually more intimidating and fucking stuff up more than anything else. Um, that was a cool way to kind of shift the gears from like, okay, we have the supernatural aspect over here. Now let's still make it supernatural, but let's bring like that reality of like, kids getting kidnapped, kids like being hurt and abused and like taken advantage of. And that's just like a scary essence in itself. And it makes you feel weird no matter what, too.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I guess it is. Yeah, it's a very like something everyone can get behind. Like this is fucking terrible, right?
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I hope John does the right thing here.
Yeah. And then we get the first like female that we kind of encounter with John too.
Yeah,
Um,
Zed, right?
yeah, Zed. And what a cool name for her, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you get to pick your own name.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. Um, yeah, Zed is an interesting character because she kind of carries on, we kind of have our warm-up issues here. And then his now crusade is kind of oh, actually it doesn't happen just yet. After this upcoming issue, after issue 5, it all focuses on Zed a little bit and the group that she's involved with. And how radical some of these like and a cult like some of these like God fearing groups can be. And again, that's another type of horror. That's another type of occultism. And I mean, honestly, like a lot of Christian groups and like Catholic groups and a lot of religions, it's all just like a different type of occult. They're all still wearing robes and like drinking some sort of blood at some point.
Yeah, I mean, extremism is not portrayed very like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah. They definitely take it as far as they can. Yeah, and it's interesting how he meets Zed. He just like stumbles across her on the street.
That was like my one thing that kind of threw me off the most was just like his meeting of Zed and how Zed just like appears. And you're a little thrown off because when you look at that first panel, when you see her, she looks like she's facing the guy that kidnaps the girls. Like John looks really big in that panel.
Yeah. Maybe it's like a foreshadowing.
Yeah, I think that's what it was meant to be at that
Yeah.
point for regarding that issue.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because yeah, the hair is different and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a kind of a weird thing, but then you realize it's John and you're kind of like, oh, okay, like it's kind of whatever. So that kind of aspect too, but just coming across someone as a stranger in the middle of nowhere. Again, like what you're saying, John just stumbles across people, and through that stumbling is where these adventures lead him. Um, and just like and he's always the thing about John too is that he seems to travel a lot. And can
Mhm.
travel easily. Like he was in Africa in the first issue for like 4 pages, 3 pages,
Oh
or
yeah.
something like that, and bounces back to New York. And then he's in when you go to issue 5, there's this really wild PTSD issue. This like coming back from Vietnam PTSD that's going on in this like really rural like community where they're just like hoping for their boys to come home because all of them went out to war and some of them came back and some of them didn't, but they're still waiting for certain guys to finally come home, and it's never going to happen. um but this like demon is taking over these people, and they're just having traumatic flashbacks, and they're not seeing their wives properly, they're not seeing their friends or family properly, and they're just out killing and literally raping their like family and neighbors. And that's the thing too, there's a whole rape scene in this one, and John just like watches in the background in
Yeah.
fear. He doesn't stop it. He's scared of what can happen to him if he goes out there and tries to face this guy. When I would think with his dick out, that'd be the easiest time to attack someone almost. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you have a bigger advantage if his pants are around his ankles. But I mean, like, that's the type of horror you're dealing with you here. And that's the thing with this, Vertigo, like Alan Moore-esque horror where you're mixing a reality, Vietnam vets having PTSD and bringing that into being like, oh, they're possessed by a demon, which kind of backs it up, but you're really looking at something that could actually happen. Like the reality of it is what makes this issue like super scary.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's something that did happen, right? It just didn't happen to their family, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's true. It's a horror of war at that point.
Yeah.
Very Garth Ennis Punisher-esque in that sense,
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Have you read a lot of Punisher? Have you read any Punisher ever?
No, not at
No,
all.
I wouldn't think so.
I'm very
Um,
selective in my readings.
yeah, you're good. You probably don't have to dive too far into that, to be honest. Um, yeah, I feel like all these British, it's always the British creators, I feel, bring the best kind of horror to comics.
Yeah, I think it's certainly different than what the Americans do usually.
Yeah, they
Um,
have I guess a longer history of or eeriness behind things, I don't know.
mm,
But American horror, I always feel it's like when they're traveling and going through the country and stopping somewhere like at a motel, that's when the horror happens. That's like the pinnacle American horror story in that
yeah.
sense.
Yeah, and it
Um
seems like at least for these volumes, it's like the horror in the everyday.
yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Honestly, the horror in the everyday. That's literally what John is facing
Yeah.
as he encounters these people.
They just happen
Uh
to be a little bit more extreme than like, what we normally see.
And I think what is issue 6? I want to say issue 6. Oh no, the first volume goes up to like issue 9 or something. It's crazy how long volume 1 is compared to most
Yeah.
books.
It definitely, I mean, yeah. Let me pull up the table of contents. Sorry, my book is coming apart, so
Oh my god, I mean, you've had that same
I've had this one
copy
for a while.
for years, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, this next issue too, like issue 6, this is where we start establishing some like key points within Constantine lore. This is where you meet Nurgle for the first
Oh,
time.
right.
And this is where him and Zed like actually have a relationship. They have sex, they're meeting up. And then you get like the weird, bizarre horror where you have like these like skinheads that have like it's one body but four heads, and just like the cult that starts revealing itself and coming after John and Zed, and it's all related to like Zed's past with her whole family. Her father runs like this you know Catholic kind of or Christian type of like following and whatnot. um yeah, issue 6 is one of those ones where you're like, okay, this is more of a developmental issue and relationship building and introduction type of issue.
Is this the one where, like, oh, yeah, it is, where one of his ways to get the, like, multi-headed creature Nazi kids thing to like fight itself is to talk about like soccer.
Yes, yes, exactly, yeah.
They all support different football teams,
And
like
that's how they, like, beat each other up. That was one of the most ridiculous, like,
where they're just like
almost
punching themselves.
yes.
Like
It's so awesome. I mean, and,
it's
like
not, like the panels are really funny because it's just like arms in every like slash. There's like, multiple arms. Yeah, that was really funny.
I love that. I love how they could still have fun with some stuff, while being horrific and brutal at the same
Yeah,
time, because
and
if
like
you
making a
saw that
point right about allegiances
yeah,
and
yeah, like, and how ridiculous some of that shit is. And I mean, I'm not a sports person. I've always felt the same way. Like, I don't know. I guess like rooting for a team that you did nothing for just does nothing for me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, good luck, guys. Um, yeah, I mean, that stuff. And I feel like this is the first issue where we see like blood and gore, because in the very beginning, John walks into that room and it's just like
Mhm.
covered in stuff. But that's like the first hint of like actual like blood. I feel like horrific blood that's like splattered everywhere, that seems gory. Everything else has been like an insect is like going to his body and you see the body stretched out, which is really scary, but you never see it like explode or anything, guts everywhere. You see
Yeah,
an
he compares it to
exorcism but he's
like
on
a
fire,
Ralph
but
Steadman drawing. I love that line.
yeah. Oh, which one?
When he walks into the room, he compares it to a Ralph Steadman drawing.
Oh my god, yes.
So
That's
I
freaking
really
brilliant.
enjoy. But yeah, you're
I
right. Like I don't think we see that kind of violence earlier.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good way to kind of pace things out and to make it flavorful, because I feel like if you're just giving us blood all the time, it's kind of it's
Yeah.
almost like cop out. You kind of need to find a way to go around it, but when it is used, it's used sporadically. Kind of like in the following issue, issue 7,
Hmm.
where we're seeing, it's looks like John's like, or someone's at a movie theater. John's at a movie theater with a girl, and they start hooking up, and there's like this crazy sci-fi film going on in the background, and this girl starts like opening up her skin, and then she like unzips her like rib cage or something,
Yeah.
or like the top of her skin, and she's just like stripping herself apart, like taking off her clothes, and then like it's skin and then bones, and then there's a cross, and then it's just a skeleton covered in blood, where Ghost in the Machine. I love this like final panel on this 2-page spread. Ghost in the Machine, where the title card is, and then it shows John and this bloody skeleton just kind of like kissing. And I thought that was just like, oh, this is just one of those like poetic British horror things that they have going on. And I love it.
Well, and it's like it's reproducing the like kiss from the movie.
Hmm.
And it's funny because it's not the last time we'll see him kiss like a skeleton or someone without their skin or
Yes,
like
exactly.
it's a reoccurring image, I should say.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of funny. It kind of shows you what John kind of dreams about, because he wakes up and he's on like a subway car and he's like, what the fuck is going
Yeah.
on here? Like, and this is one of my favorite issues because, the friend he meets up with, what was his name again? Um,
I'm on the page. I don't know, but this issue Like every time I read it, it does fuck me up.
Right? I felt the
Yeah,
same exact way when I read it because this one has
it's
stuck
so
with me the most.
horrifying. Like, oh, go ahead.
I can't figure out what this dude's name is. I totally forgot. Ba-da-ba-ba-bam. But I don't know. So this dude,
Richie. Oh wait, no,
Richie.
Richie's is Richie from the first one?
No, I think that's this one. Let me see, because he's gonna plug himself in right here where I'm swiping. Da, 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 da. Well, anyways, while we figure out this dude's
Yeah,
name, what he does is that like he's like a computer geek and he's super good with computers and he's able to go inside of a computer. And this is some cool modern like AI stuff that maybe we're doing. Google just announced those weird like Google visors and whatnot. And when I saw the announcement for that, I was just like, Constantine, dude, like no way, no fucking way.
no,
Um, but like it fries his friend. His friend gets so lost in this cyber world
it is
that
Richie. I just saw
it
it.
is okay, cool. Yeah. So
Yeah,
Richie gets like so lost in here. And John doesn't want him to die. He just doesn't know what to do. But Richie starts frying out, literally just catching on fire, and his body is just decomposing and just lights up. He just kind of gets electrocuted basically. And to the point where his fucking head falls off. Like when
yeah, it's
that
not.
happened, you're like, what the fuck? And John's like, I've just killed another friend. A friend that was doing John a favor because John needed some information and he was using Richie to like go into the internet and retrieve the information. Um, John
Well,
gets
like
the information
Richie isn't dead. His consciousness is trapped.
trapped in this
Which
like
is the
cyber
scary
world.
part. Like, this is like, a very early interpretation of the internet, right? And
Yeah.
like being stuck there, just, yeah. Like he's stuck in some sort of mainframe or like, yeah, the internet essentially, right?
Yeah. Essentially, yeah.
And oh, the part where he just like walks away and like his friend is calling for him.
Gosh. That's John Constantine though. Like he's literally can't face the what am I trying to say? He can't face the consequences for anything. He's asking his friend for help. He went to his friend for help. His friend died getting him information he needed. And now his friend is trapped and he doesn't know how to tell his friend what just happened to him. And he's
Yeah.
like, well, I got the info I needed. I just got to walk away from this. I can't handle this shit. Like, I can't believe this just fucking happened. And he just like leaves him lost in there. And then
And he
again,
unplugs the machine because he thinks that'll solve it because he doesn't understand the internet. Like,
yeah, yeah, it's still
he's like,
early.
I'll just turn off this computer and it'll be fine.
This will fix it. This maybe that's what he thinks about. Like, it's just gonna kill him, and that's just gonna
Yeah,
end
like
it
a
at that point.
mercy killing, right?
Yeah, like if you're like in a hospital bed and you're just being unplugged, it's the same kind of concept at that point. Um, and
Oh yeah,
then
it
he's
says
just
like
like,
the last panel, it's like no flash, no bang, nothing but the black, lapping darkness of the void.
damn, I wish I spoke that poetically in my head whenever I make a movement, whenever I
Oh,
unplug something.
Brandon,
Like,
what?
and that then it just shows how haunted he is behind all
Yeah.
this, and that's the reoccurring thing that we keep on bouncing back to is just like John is just fucking torn up about everything that he does here. um and then it bounces back to homegirl Zed and this crazy cult thing that's been set up for the last few issues. Which and it's kind of like pretty basic occulty stuff. They like drug her, they like do some experiments on her. They're gonna like she's like the chosen one for something. I don't remember off the top of my head
I can't
why.
remember the name of this particular cult.
Is it not the warriors people? I think it was the
The
same people.
Warriors, yeah.
Yeah, like God's Warriors or something like that.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
they, yeah, yeah.
And it's let me see what happened to John right before this. Because John wakes up like strapped up here, right?
Um, in the next issue?
Yeah, like they end up capturing him too, and he starts getting tortured and experimented on and drugged up, and kind of beat because he goes looking
Oh
for
yeah.
her. Yeah. And that's the weird part too. Honestly, where do we go from here? Because this issue just kind of starts with John being
Oh,
captured.
so he's on the train and his ghost friends, he's running from them and he jumps out of a moving train. And
That's
so he's
right.
in the hospital because he's all
Yeah.
like, you know, fucked up from jumping out of a train.
And that's the wild part behind him too, is like how haunted he is and how much this just destroys his mental and his well-being. And like he's even just saying like there's this part, don't you remember the girl, John? Don't you remember what you did to her in Newcastle? And that Newcastle thing gets brought up in the movie. It gets brought up in Sandman and the Constantine, Joanna Constantine thing, like the
Yeah.
dream that she had where she failed. And he's like, "Of course I remember." And it shows this little girl, and it shows this girl melting and turning into this like demoness thing. And they're doing like shock therapy on John, which, I mean, of course, is just like gonna fuck him up even more than we're already seeing him get fucked up for, you know. And it just reminds him of what just happened to Richie. It reminds him of all of his friends, and he's just like in a hospital. His arms and legs are broken. It's so fucked.
Yeah. And like the Newcastle thing is such a like core component of this character.
Yeah, it is. It's
Um,
one of the most important parts of his personality.
yeah, it's like, and like we'll get into this in the next volume, but like it's definitely when he realizes that he doesn't know everything. um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I do like that, like, and this happens a lot too in these volumes. We see him get injured a lot.
Yeah, he really
He
does.
is not a superhero.
He is very mortal in every
Yeah,
way and shape and
he's
form.
always got like a black eye or like, breaks every limb.
And this is like another key part of like this is a key part of John's like history because the rest
Yeah.
of this issue is basically between him and Nurgle, that demon, and what they like with the deal they make, where Nurgle gets John's soul in exchange for some of Nurgle's blood to live through that moment. So he now has demon's blood inside of him, and we get to see the ramifications of what it's like to have demon's blood and like exist like that at the same time. And also, that's brought
Yeah.
up in that House of Mystery too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The end of that episode, right? Where like
yeah.
all the people he sold his soul to.
I love that. And they're all like, "What the fuck, dude? You can't sell your soul more than once." And there's like four demons there, just being like, "What the
Yeah.
heck?" And I think that's the first time we see Nurgle like in any sort of outside of this like
Oh,
comic.
I didn't
Yeah,
realize that.
yeah, exactly. That kind of that was really cool to see. And I think at that I don't know, was that the end of volume one? Because wait, oh no, number
No.
9.
Yeah.
Damn, that's fucking crazy. Volume one is one of the longest volumes I've ever read in a comic. I've never seen like a 9 issue volume for a first one.
Yeah, it's pretty long, yeah.
And this one, like this, what's cool about this next issue is this is just John, just like fucked up. Like he's recovering from these wild injuries, adjusting to this demon blood in his body that's just throwing him the fuck off. Like it's making him feel weird. He feels like he's hallucinating and seeing shit. The memories are coming back harder than ever. Like he's having nightmares on the street. It feels like there's like demons like following him. There's like trash like turning into like a body form and chasing after him and everything, money chasing into uh a new form and chasing him. And he kind of has a sit down with like, I think it's himself or his dad, I think I want to say. um
Um yeah, I think it is his dad.
It's his dad. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's his dad. He has like a conversation with his dad, and he's just having a cigarette, and he's kind of facing his own little things. But he's also in this like rundown town that's being destroyed at the same time. And I just thought that was kind of hilarious because there's like a bulldozer or a wrecking ball coming through as he
Yeah.
finishes up at like, I don't know, 2 in the morning, just like having this ghost conversation.
Yeah, I mean, is he being chased by, is it just his imagination or is it
I think it's more like the like the demon like haunting him at the same time. Kind of like Nurgle just fucking with him because he can.
Yeah.
But this one also leads us up into like him meeting up with Zed, where out of nowhere, of course, she just appears like a little occultist and whatnot. And they end up having sex one last time, and she just knows it's going to be the last time for them. And even John like walks away from her. Like they have sex like inside of a tree trunk, which is kind of wild, to be honest.
Well, and, like, he intentionally goes to her, like, to have sex with her, though, right?
Oh, I didn't realize that he intentionally found her.
Because, like, if she's not, like, pure, right,
That's right. Then
then
it won't.
then the God's warriors' plans are thwarted. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah, she was a crusader, and not just that, she was chosen one, marked from the birth to be the Mary. Just remember him fondly, and hope that he fares well when the New Jerusalem conquers hell. God, I don't know why that was so hard. But yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so like her like being tainted, and by John out of all people, they just feel like that would be the best outcome for all of this. But then this what's cool is that like this one he was just with this one girl, of course, and then he goes back to this flat and he gets called upon by the Swamp Thing. And I love that because Swamp Thing, I love when he just emerges out of fucking nothing and like then he carries through. But John, I think in this tie-in at this point, he has to like have sex with Abby so that Abby can get
yeah,
pregnant.
has to have sex
Yeah,
with Abby.
and like Swamp Thing, like is just like I am gonna take over your body
Oh,
so
that's
that
right,
you
yeah.
can mate with her, and then I don't know if maybe it's in issue 10 or something. Yeah, Sex and Death. I want to say it's in here. Um,
Let me see.
no,
Yeah,
it's not. No, I think I just read like a panel for something else before, but oh no, it is at the end of
it
this one.
is in this one, yeah.
Yeah, because he's like traveling through like the
He goes
fucking
wherever he is while Swamp Thing is borrowing
his body,
his
yeah,
stuff.
he's just like it's kind of funny because he comes out as like a flying sperm with like
Oh,
he has a baby's
definitely, yeah.
body, his sting, spiky, blown back hair, screaming, but he has that baby body. It's so cute, and it's just like a flying sperm going into like some Alan Mooresy type of
Not just one sperm,
transcendental.
Brandon.
Yeah,
It is like a whole page.
I guess that would be like Swamp Thing shooting him out in a sense. I have no idea. I don't know why it has to be sperm and why he's being reborn. I guess that's like when it happens when you're a ghost. The context in that is just so off the top. I think they were just trying to be over the top with this part. Um, but floating
Yeah,
through
can you
people's,
imagine what the, like, instructions were, like, for the illustrator?
I would love to read some of these Jamie Delano scripts.
Yeah.
I always thought Jamie was a female too, but Jamie's a guy actually, and I was kind
Yeah.
of surprised at that. Yeah. Um, And it's kind of cool just seeing John just travel through fucking the world and then just fucking tripping the fuck out, meeting all these people, these like monks and this like spiritual stuff. But he also gets to come across like God's warriors in this. No, I think that's a different flashback.
No,
We've
no, no,
switched
he
over. Yeah.
does. He gets to see, like, when she's, rejected by the angels, right?
Ah, yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what's going on here.
I mean,
And
I guess
all,
that's another thing about, like, Hellblazer, like, neither side, right? Neither God nor the devil are, like, portrayed, like, as the good guy.
right. And I kind of love that too. I love
Yeah.
that. Like, yeah, they're both kind of the bad guys. They both have their flaws, all this type of stuff. Um, they even bounce him back into like hell in a sense too, where he goes to like I think this is Nurgle. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
to Nurgle and everything, and shows him get tortured and like kind of tossed around um, until he escapes that. And it's kind of fun, just John just bouncing around this entire issue. Um, and he's in the ocean. He's just like doing all this wild fucking shit while fucking Swamp Thing's fucking until he gets pulled back into reality because Swamp Thing is finished. And then, Abby's all in love with him, just saying, Alex, I love you. I love you. And then he's just like, yo, it's me again. Imagine like having sex with someone and then all of a sudden their personality just switched, like, because they are literally someone else now. And she's fucking pissed. She slaps
Yeah.
the shit out of John. She's like, you sicken me. And it's just like, well, I mean, like, you fucking knew what was going on here, girl. And she storms off into the swamp, and Swamp Thing's like, yeah, you should dip, dude. We're done
Yeah.
here. We don't have any more further business. And dude, Abby's crying. Like, that's sad. You know what I mean? Like, it's so
Yeah.
ridiculous. But
Well, and then then he tries to go home again, and his apartment like can't catch a break. Uh, yeah, his like landlady and his neighbors are all dead, and his
that's
apartment's destroyed. Right?
I love that. I love it so much. Like exactly what you said at the beginning. He just never ever catches a break. He can't rest. He can't just get a minute to himself.
Yeah.
Um, and after that leads into the next part, which is Newcastle.
Hmm.
And essentially, this whole entire book is like, it's so cool because it gives you the like horrific event where John what traumatized John so much on like not being able to save this little girl and kind of just be able to rescue her from everything. But it shows him as like the young, kind of more 80s John, just the black shirt and the blue jeans. And like with his like group of friends that we keep on seeing dead versions of them. And you can tell it's them by like the one dude has the hat. I think his name is Benjamin or something, and the sunglasses. But they're all like unique in their own ways where they have their own little like thing going on with them. Um, but John goes back to the location where it all happened, and that's what triggers out this flashback. Oh, it shows right here. Yeah. Frank on holiday from trouble in California, and Judith, who I met at North Beach in Arzum, studying tantric yoga. Anne Marie, the lonely psychic, Fat 40 and secretly in love with me. Richie Simpson, a computer freak, deadhead, and quantum magic pioneer. Gary Lester, musician, counterculture clone, and small time conjurer. Benjamin, the spooky 12-year-old genius and encyclopedia of Arcania, and me. Like, what an interesting group of friends that John had like been running around with, you know?
Well, and they're in a band. This is his band too, right?
Oh
Or
yeah, it's the band. Yeah, yeah. That
yeah,
trips
which
me out
I
because they
can't
don't seem
imagine
like a
his
band.
band either.
Yeah, like it doesn't seem like a concrete band, to be honest.
Yeah. But they want to get paid.
Yeah, yeah. And this, I don't know, it's kind of wild. They walk into this like horror scene and then see this little girl just like dancing around, and they're wondering like what happened, and they're saying like, um, it's weird. It's again the like child molestation stuff, like even the quote here. And he makes me go down to the cellar too when him and his friends and the girls from the club get drunk and take stuff to get bare. And I have to watch while they touch each other all over. And then I have to touch them, and they're all noisy and smelly. And sometimes he takes pictures of me and his friends. And I told him I didn't like it. I told him. He he should have listened. It wasn't my fault. One of them has too much of the stuff, and it hurts. And it hurts one of the girls, and he's hurting me. And this girl like fucking summons. Does she like summon like a demon from like her fear and shit?
Yeah. Um yeah, it's so horrific. Like I keep using
Yeah,
that word. I can't describe, especially particularly like that description that you just read is really like awful.
yeah,
um Coming
yeah.
from a child, yeah, she definitely somehow, yeah, calls a demon.
And the shitty part about what happens here, like, is that John is like, all right, cool. I have an idea. I'm going to have you guys all do this stuff, really just to distract some people so he could do the spell. And he's summoning a different demon. But when he summons this other demon, it just goes fucking wrong. And it goes into like, he summons it wrong. It doesn't like do what John requests it to do. And it kills like that dog creature, but then it takes over and becomes something else. And then that's just like when the shit show happens, and it's just like one of the like weirdest panels you could ever imagine, as like it tries to capture everybody and kind of tear them up and whatnot. Like the creature it makes, like, is fucking, that's how you get it with the horror in these comics, is these
Yeah.
like bizarre fucking creatures.
Oh yeah, because it's just like a combination of bits of
Yeah,
people.
limbs and like heads and bodies, and like there's like a horse head in there too.
Yeah. Yeah. Is Newcastle depicted in the movie? I don't remember. Like, does he have a memory
No,
or flashback? Because
no, it I think it's just brought up in a line.
okay, because in Sandman, like the series, right, we get to see Joanna Constantine's version of Newcastle.
I love that. I love seeing that version too.
Yeah, which obviously is a much more sanitized, like Netflix friendly version than what you get in the comics. But I think still, like, it's interesting to see how you can portray like an event uh, in very different ways and have the same impact on the character.
Hmm. I can see that for sure.
Yeah.
And I love that because even in the animated movies, it's hinted towards a whole lot too, into like that Newcastle event itself. And then you know what? Like the next, is it the next issue? I want to say it's not. I think it's the issue after. Oh, it is. I was thinking of the beach. I was thinking the beach issue was up next because that one's just bizarre in itself.
Oh, sorry, I'm just looking at the last thing where it's just her arm and yeah.
Yeah, it's almost, I don't know. I feel like satisfied, but almost disappointed. It wasn't even more like insane. Like were more people. I guess does it name everyone who died in that scene, or did they all just kind of split off?
They all survive, right? Except for
Yeah,
the 12-year-old boy.
yeah.
But they're all like traumatized by this event.
Hmm. And that
Even
was
if they
just,
were like on the periphery, even if they were outside, right?
yeah, exactly. And it was like kind of one of John's first like big incidents, and it was his like first time
Yeah.
like having to deal with something like this. And I think that's what makes him so cold is that like I fucked up and failed this like 12-year-old little girl, and now it's just kind of like fuck, you know what I mean? Like what can be worse than that? That I already haven't faced before.
Yeah. It's a canon event.
Yeah, straight up. Honestly, it's a
Spider
canon event.
Verse.
Yeah. Um, and so the next issue, which is almost wrapping up volume 2 in a sense, because like the horrorist we could just touch on real quick, but
Well, it's
John
interesting
is,
because the way it's split in the like volumes itself,
uh-huh,
like that like it's kind of strange. It feels like maybe the first issue that's in here should be in
with volume
original
1.
Sins, but like I
Yeah,
guess because this was already so long
it's
and
kind of
they
weird.
really wanted to get the swamp, like, oh no, because it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
It
the
seems like
formatting throws me off.
yeah,
I feel
like
like you
this
could
should
have
have just
done 1 through
started with
6.
Newcastle. Yeah,
Yeah, or just done that. Like either start this volume 2 with Newcastle or done like 1 through 6 and then 6 through whatever 12. And
yeah,
then like cuz 12 kind of wraps stuff up in a sense because what happens here is he does a spell because the shit with Nurgle is fucking him up real bad. And he ends
more
up like going
fun.
back to Richie's thing and trying to connect with Richie in this whole thing. Um, and he battles Nurgle in this like cyber demon battle, platform. And um, fucking Richie takes over John's body and is going to leave John to die. Um, but then like Richie decides that since Nurgle's body's there, that'd be a better body. So then he tries taking over the demon's body, which fucking counteracts on him. And only John survives this whole fucking mess, of course. But he thinks he's free from Nurgle and isn't. Kind of a weird, like, these two volumes are so, they have so many stories within themselves that kind of connect. I'm kind of interested on the writing process that they might have had to connect some of these issues because it's not even like a typical arc. If an arc was going to happen, it would have been the Richie with Nurgle and then the defeat, or just like the whole Gods Warriors arc going on. But you kind of have like three storylines going on while you have these individual little adventures happening in each issue too.
Yeah, yeah. I this issue was really I I was a little disappointed because I kind of liked how Richie's story ended in
Yeah,
the first issue, where he was trapped because like that's really scary.
yeah,
Um, so seeing him like actually like plot and try and steal Constantine's body was less interesting to me.
hmm,
Um,
I could
but
see that. It didn't
yeah,
really
but I think you
just
can see
resonate.
like Constantine's cleverness because I think he's the one who convinces Richie, right,
Yeah.
to use the demon over him.
Yeah, exactly. That's again, yeah, good point. His clever ability, and that's like a key characteristic of Constantine is just like he's just good with his words. He could fucking
Yeah,
convince you. He has a great tongue.
Yeah, he's a manipulator.
Yep. Yeah. And that just kind of wraps up that like those arcs. It wraps up the Richie arc, it wraps up the Nurgle arc, and it wraps up the Gods Warriors arc as along with like John's origins at the same time within those first 12 issues.
Yeah, it really does.
Cause then
Um,
issue 13 just fucking it's literally just a bad dream about the apocalypse and nuclear waste. And that's like one of the big political issues there too, is just like the ocean going to shit and having to restart humanity and like their skin's falling apart and they want to start having kids and the kids come out mutated. It's like a flying seal, two-headed seal, and it doesn't live. He tries to make it live, but these seagulls fucking eat up this baby two-headed flying seal. And then like John gets eaten up and then he fucking wakes up on the beach and he's like, "What the fuck just happened?"
yeah. I just flipped through it while you were describing it. Yeah, John doesn't have regular dreams.
Yeah, it's again, he's trying to rest and he just can't get some rest in at all
When
whatsoever.
he appears in Sandman, does Dream like help out with his dreams? I don't remember.
I don't remember in the comic.
Yeah.
I know for sure in the TV show he like helps Joanna for sure, but I don't know
Yeah.
about the comic. I got to
Because
double back on
he
that.
could use some help.
Yeah, I don't yeah, I really don't think he does in the comic. That would be too easy for them.
Yeah. Oh man. And then the Bloody Saint one is wild.
Oh, yeah, so that one I didn't have a copy. I had to read that one online. The annual, that Bloody Saint issue, you wanna just sum that up real fast for us in a couple sentences? Like, it's a really long, dense issue that goes back to, like, the days of Merlin and everything that, like
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't sure like how much of it because clearly John has been institutionalized several times.
Yeah,
Um
yeah,
Ravenscar, uh, which is a secure facility for the dangerously deranged. And it like I think it suggests or it says that after Newcastle he like had to go somewhere for a while and like he's
yeah.
been back and forth like he's escaped and he's gone back in and he's been let out and he's gone back like it's a home base for him in some ways. But then he meets like someone who used to know him when, right, who's
Mhm.
like uh just like trying to make as much money as he can off of whatever events are happening. I think this is the when the English were fighting the Argentinians. Um, yeah, but anyways, he reminds him of this like music video that was it a
That's
music
right.
video?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was, like, on a cassette tape and everything too, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, "You should sell that. It's so rare. Like, you'll make so much money, right?" And so he goes to look for it. But of course, he like meets a lady on the way.
Yeah.
He has sex. He has weird dreams. um, and then like part two, I don't even know. It's like, is it really an ancestor of his, or is it him? Like in this Arthurian legend.
That's what threw me off too. I feel like it's still him. Like, it's still him living through
I,
all
s-
those
I see why
years,
you
like
left this one for me to like
yeah,
summarize.
yeah, like, it's such a bizarre one because that guy's, like, with Merlin and, like, sacrificing to the mother of all or something, and even takes his kid there to have immortality, and that's his whole hunt, is just trying to be, like, to live longer and everything, and, he sacrifices his son, but then he starts, like, kinda slowly aging and deteriorating, and having Merlin, like, tell this tale of his life, like, exposition to us, the reader, and he's like, "Sing it to me, Merlin." As he like Merlin's just a head and shit at this point,
Yeah.
and then he even sets like Merlin's head on fire. Um, I don't remember how it wraps up though.
Uh, well, he wants the last song because he's gonna die.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Um, and then the dragon shows up.
yeah, yeah. It gets fucking
Because of
wonky.
course, right? Like, why
Yeah,
not? Yeah, I thought it was funny. Like, this is the first, I think, issue that talks about the pronunciation of Constantine.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, 13 issues in, we get that.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I'm ruined. I can't say Constantine like consistently.
No, no, no. Too much work, too much effort at
Too
that
much
point.
work. Um, but yeah, he finds the tape though.
Yeah, at the end of it.
Yeah, he finds the VHS, and then the next issue is the video, I guess.
Oh, that's right. They have the
He puts on
whole
art
music
show,
video
art
like
show.
paneled out and everything with the lyrics of John singing with his band and all that. I thought that was kind of cool. That's how it ended. I thought that was kind of interesting ending.
Yeah,
Just
it's only
to
like 3 pages or 4 pages.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like
And
trying to figure out what the song would sound like.
yeah, same here. I was trying to find like a rhythm or a beat to it, and I was like, nah, this is just a writer. He doesn't know what the fuck he's
It's like
doing.
a little rhymey, I guess.
Yeah. um and that's like that's 1 through 12 and the annual, and then we had this really crazy special that we'll just talk about real briefly to wrap it up. The
Yeah.
Horrorist part 1 and 2 with Jamie Delano and David Lloyd, who did V for Vendetta. And I love David's like art in it because I love seeing you don't see David Lloyd doing a lot of stuff. He does a lot of his own independent stuff now.
Mm.
And he did V for Vendetta, and I really can't think of a whole lot of David Lloyd comics when I really try to crack down into it.
You met David Lloyd, right?
Yeah, he would hang out at the table at San Diego Comic Con
Mhm.
every year. And so I'd always get to hang out with David Lloyd. I have a lot of David Lloyd Hank stories actually, and he's one of my favorite humans
Oh.
in the world. I remember I got to escort him to like an 80s British panel where they just got
Oh,
to talk about the 80s, the British invasion.
mm.
And it was the first time I got to hang out with David, and I was all fucking just scared and nervous and like excited. I got to escort David to his panel, and he's like, "Oh, almost forgot." And he just pops under his table, he just pops open a bottle of wine, fills a party red cup to the fucking rim with wine, and he's like, "Let's head out." And he's just like sipping on red wine going through San Diego Comic Con to his fucking
Oh my
panel.
gosh.
And it's just like he doesn't spill a drop either. It is a full cup through all the crowd and everything. Little old David Lloyd just kind of like, wobbling
Yeah, I
around
saw
and
him
shit.
very briefly and just like was like, "Hi."
Yeah, like, and he just
But
like
now I'm gonna add that like the image I have of him, I'm gonna add like the solo cup. Like
yeah, I had the solo cup. It's the best part of him. If I had a David Lloyd action figure, it would have like his little color. He uses like crayons for a lot of his head sketches.
mm,
It
mm.
would just be that, a shitty notebook, and just like a bottle of wine with the fucking red cup. Just fill it to the rim. That's the ultimate David Lloyd action figure. Um, and his art in this is just really creepy and eerie. Like
Yeah.
it's a painted texture. And I feel like also the title, The Horrorist, I feel is like the coolest fucking title in the world.
Yeah.
Almost like equal to Hellblazer, how badass that sounds. Like The Horrorist sounds like a fucking scary book. Um, but it's kind of I forgot the girl's origin in it. She's dead for sure.
Um she was photographed by a famous like war photographer,
Yes.
and family saw the image and wanted to adopt her or something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And when she was brought into their lives, like immediately shit started going wrong for this family.
Like the husband
Um,
killed himself or like the son or something, like all this horrific stuff has started
yeah,
happening.
like they have another daughter, and like the daughter becomes anorexic.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, that's right. Yep.
yeah. And yeah, the dad kills himself, and yeah, it's just bad.
And wherever
Everywhere.
she travels, it brings like memories to people. And like there's like a mailman who I guess again a PTSD type of thing. She goes near him, and then he starts having war flashbacks. And then there's just all these scenes as she bounces through towns and horrific stuff is going on. And John is trying to find her, but his location spell just gives him like a general region, and he goes there and he hears the stories. He's like, "All right, I'm fucking close. I'm really fucking close." Um, and it's interesting because it's like a two-part special in the copies I have. It's like two like perfect bound editions, and they're both like 60
Oh,
pages or something.
Yeah, I think mine's only split by like one image.
Mm.
Um, yeah, because we talked about this. Like, yeah, this is where it like changes over for me.
Yeah, what a cool image to like switch over on it too.
Yeah. Yeah, and like in the second issue, it's just like it becomes clear what's happening, and like John's clearly afraid of her
Yeah.
too. Like I don't know if he's even intrigued, but he just feels compelled to find her,
Hmm.
but is also afraid of like what's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's again, John is like scared of everything he faces. He's not confident, but he knows he just has to figure out a way to get through it, you know? Like, and he's the
Yeah,
only one that can actually stop whatever is happening as much as he just doesn't fucking want to. Like, he'd rather just hang back and let it just unfold on its own, but he just can't let himself do that either. How does it wrap up? I barely even remember the ending to this one, and I've read this
oh
book
yeah, for
twice.
sure. um yeah, I guess I would also say too, though, like he starts off really numb at the beginning.
Yeah,
And
it
so
starts
it
off
seems
very cold in
that
the
he's,
beginning
like,
too.
yeah, afraid or, like, of this, like, entity, is intriguing to him, like, "Oh, I feel something."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. Like that because I mean, and you look at everything we've just covered with John up to this point. So
yeah,
him just like him feeling numb sounds about right. And for
yeah,
him to feel anything past that, that's what's getting his attention. He's just like, what can bring something out of me, like fear or anything at this point, like just a feeling because of everything I've faced.
yeah. And, like, she's the horrorist in question, right?
Yeah,
Like, that's her title. Um, yeah, they have an encounter, where he finds her, and, he wants her to have the same impact that she's had on other people on him. So then they have sex.
that's right. That's fucking right. Oh
How
my
did you
gosh.
forget? Like,
That's
I
insane.
believe she takes off her face, and
Can you show that image real fast? Can you bring
oh
that
yeah,
up?
of course. Like, why not?
Oh, that's so great. And David's art in that is just so awesome.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I love that it's like, it's like what, 4 colors maybe,
Mhm.
a lot of black and white and red, and some browns. Yeah, and basically they have this like existential battle while having sex, where he sees her entire like all the things she's done to people, and she sees all the things that have happened to him too. I think, um,
That's
and
right. Yep.
he wins. Yeah,
That that's the thing. John has seen the worst of the worst. He's been through the craziest of the craziest, and he's been to hell and back, and there's not a lot that you can do that can really phase him at this point.
yeah. I mean, I love the like. There's these 2 panels where it's like some things never change, huh? Still old kiss of death, Constantine.
Yes, I
But
remember
at
that.
least now it hurts again.
So great. That's great. I love it. I love that.
I feel like a perfect way to end on John.
And
Although I
you
think
know,
it suggests that she like survives because there's like footprints leading away at the very end. So
okay.
I don't know what happened with that. Like if they continued or picked up on that. I don't remember.
I don't. We'll find out if that ever gets picked back up because as I haven't read too much further into this. In fact, if I just see, I've read up to the Neil Gaiman issue. That's for sure what I've
No
done.
wonder you knew what number it was.
Um, and it's not 14, as I found out. You are definitely right. I think it is closer in the 20s. I'm not seeing it at the moment. I'd recognize the cover for sure. Maybe I have read more than I thought.
Yeah, I don't
Huh.
think I've read the Gaiman issue at all.
I guess maybe I don't know what it is. I thought it was sooner. I thought I'd recognize it because it's like a hearts type of thing, or maybe I just didn't. I didn't import my comics right onto this. So I don't think this is in order. I'll look. Oh, here it is. Here it is. 27. You're right. It was in the 20s. So I think maybe I've read an issue or two past 27, which is wild. Like I typically never cover like 2 volumes of a book in any episode because it gets so dense and everything, and there's so much to cover, especially introducing a character. But I think we kind of killed covering 2 issues at once right now.
Oh,
Um,
right. Awesome. I
But
mean, yeah, it's a lot.
I'm wondering, like, all right, if the Fear Machine, that's going to be the next volume, and that one's a bit more digestible because it's just issues 14 through 22. Um, and then like volume 4 after that, gosh, it's kind of crazy. So we won't even get to the Neil Gaiman one until volume 4,
Okay.
The Family Man. Okay, I've read The Family Man before. So yeah, this goes up to 33. So I've almost finished that volume before.
Does he show up after Jamie Delano leaves, or is he just like a
No, it's just for a one shot issue that
oh,
he does it for. Jamie Delano comes back. We actually get one written by Grant Morrison as well somewhere along here
oh
too.
wow. I haven't read Grant
Um,
Morrison in a long time.
I
That'll be
haven't. Yeah, I don't even remember it to be honest. Like, but I think Garth Ennis starts in volume 5, so we'll kind of blast through the Jamie Delano stuff, and then before we enter the Garth world, because I heard the Garth Ennis stuff is phenomenal as fuck.
yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's so much hell to like literally battle through and everything. And we actually I haven't done a podcast this long in so long, but it's fun
Oh
talking about
wow.
all these
I just saw
characters.
the timestamp. Yeah. This was
But
fun. I'm glad we got to do
me
it.
too. I'm so glad that finally I have a reason to read every issue of Hellblazer, and I couldn't be more happy or ecstatic about this. But Sarah, thanks for hanging out with this, and thanks for doing this mission. And
Of
as long as these
course.
issues are, I'm not surprised this episode was this long. And we're in here for the long run. And like John, we won't give up, and we'll fight through it, and we'll just we'll find a way. Maybe not cigarettes and alcohol, but we'll definitely find a way to get through it.
All right.
Thanks for hanging.